I have from my end before I turn it over to all of you. I do want to remind you that this is one of 4 different instances we have to be able to engage with the team. A lot of these aren't as APAC friendly, but I do just want to make people aware that if you are interested in Python development work or Java development work, we have ongoing syncs for those in office hours. And if you are interested in the APAC zone, please reach out to me. We're looking for more individuals, specifically in Java and Python, to help us with development. And so I'd love to get more individuals plugged into that as well. And then the one other announcement I have before I turn it over to questions, I'm going to post a link in chat. We have our upcoming Microsoft Build session, and we're wanting to feature community members during the session. So we'd love to be able to have you record a quick video that highlights what you think about Semantic Kernel, the top 3 words that come to mind, and then how you're using it for your AI solutions. And so it's a really quick, kind of under-minute video we'd love for you to be able to record and share out to us. There's just a few things we would need from you to go ahead and sign a consent form and then record that video. And so if you're interested, we'd love to be able to feature you during our session. I've linked to that form for next steps. With that, that's all the announcements I have from my end. Matthew, anything that you can think of that we should cover before we dive into Q&A?
I just wanted +1 filling out this form, and if you're interested recording a video, I want to throw a party on the build stage, and I can't have a party if I don't have people actually come to it, and so we're going to be virtually including folks through these videos. So definitely fill this out, definitely record a video, and we'd love to see you on the stage. In terms of other updates from the Semantic Kernel team, Sophia's and the rest of the team has been doing a really great job getting a bunch of blog posts out, highlighting all of the new features and functionality that's been coming to Semantic Kernel. So Sophia, if you're up for it, I'd love to just kind of walk through some of the blog posts that you've published. We can see all the new features and see if there's any questions specific to those. Does it work?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
Perfect. I can see your screen as well, Matthew. Do you want me to walk through some of them, or do you want to go through some of the items?
I think he might be
I think he's frozen. Yeah. Let me just put it in chat. But yeah, in the meantime, I'll go and share out the link that we have to the blog. There's been a lot of ongoing work, both externally and internally, from guest blogs as well. And so I'll put that link in while Matthew rejoins as well.
Back. I hear folks.
Yeah, perfect. We can hear you now.
Okay. Oh, Lordy. Okay, Teams crashed. You know, y'all have all been there. Okay. And can y'all see my screen? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, yep. Perfect. Okay. So I was flipping through the old blogs, and since it's been a month, Sophia, you want to share a little bit about the office hour recordings? I don't know if this audience has heard about the great news.
Yeah, definitely. So moving forward, we'll have all of our recordings from both this APAC monthly session and our weekly US and EMEA located in the Microsoft Reactor YouTube. And so there's a dedicated playlist and channel where those will get uploaded. It'll be at least a week, if not sooner. Usually they're getting them out pretty quickly, but just be patient if you're not seeing them a day or two after. But they have been pretty quick to get those published out. And then moving forward, we'll be able to highlight and show any of the different items across each of the week over weeks with that as well.
Right. Okay, then we just keep going. Microsoft Build is coming up. It's like 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away. So we have our own session, which we've already kind of mentioned, and we're eager to get folks videos so that we can show all of you on stage with us. This one will be recorded, so if you're not able to attend, you will be able to watch it after the fact. There's a bunch of other build sessions that are being presented by other teams. I'm particularly excited about the ones that are being done by the .NET teams, so the first couple ones. Many of these are not being recorded. So the only way to see them is if you do attend Microsoft Build, either virtually or remotely. But this is going to be a really great moment. All of my waking hours are currently devoted to Build, so I'm very glad for this to land. Let's see what else is going on. We've had some updates with Python. We've had some guest blogs by Jose, so this is just a call out if you are interested in doing a guest blog with us. We're totally open to that. And then the last big one that I want to call out are filters have been enhanced thanks to Dimitro. So if y'all have been using filters, we call them hooks in our Java library and our Python library. What they basically do is they allow you to have access, and actually I've been working on a pretty PowerPoint visualization of this. It allows you to access key moments in the kernel lifecycle so that you can adjust some of its behavior. So before, whenever you created a filter, you had these pre and post bits of functionality that you could add. But this was difficult because you couldn't easily combine the logic of these two sections without doing some awkward things, right? So instead, what's been changed is we've combined them into a single method. In this case, whenever a function is invoked with semantic kernel, this method will be called. And what's new is you get a delegate, this next function, that you can call that will actually invoke additional filters or eventually the final function. And this allows you to replicate the behavior that you had before, where you can perform some pre-logic and some post-logic. But what's extra powerful about this is you can start doing things like wrapping the function call in a try statement so that if there is an exception, if there's a problem, you can customize the results and send them back to the AI, right? So that's the function calling. I'm sorry, this is the function invocation filter. We also previously had a prompt filter. It's now been renamed to the prompt rendering filter, and it has the same format. And then lastly, we also introduced an automatic function invocation filter. And this is really powerful. If we go to our nice little diagram, inside of the automatic function call loop, you want to be able to control whether or not this loop continues or not. So a request is sent to the LM can either respond to a message or do a tool call. If it asks for a tool call, you can basically tell the LM, hey, escape out of this loop, we're done. You don't need to do it anymore, right? And because we're inside of the loop, we have additional metadata like the sequence index, so how many times has it run, which you have parallel function calling, which function is being called, and so you can do some additional advanced functionality with this filter. So we're super excited about this. We love for folks to be able to try this out. We're going to make this even more real. So Dimitro and Sophia have been working on additional samples for filters so that we can see how you can use it for responsible AI, semantic caching, and more. Okay. So with that, I think that's all from the blog. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. There's one last big update that I want to share that we haven't blogged about. Before we do that, I want to see if there's any questions on filters or any of the other updates that we've shared so far.
I have a question quickly, Matthew, just about filters. I did raise a question and discussion board around returning output from native functions. So basically getting some results as part of executing some function from plugin. That filters, I'm assuming that could help with that from using out of function calling.
Yes. So any function, whether it's an API, a native function, or a prompt, they will invoke or trigger the function invocation filter.
Yeah.
And so you will get that information, and you can either overwrite the result, change the result. We've seen people do like PII detection. So all of that is available with these new filters.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's available from 1.9, is that right?
Let's see. There's a discussion. So you'll need to at least create the filter, and then you can add it. If the filter's already been created for you, and what we're doing is we're starting to create samples and some out-of-the-box filters, you would be able to add them to the kernel with a single line of code.
Yeah. So that's, I think, package is releasing 1.9, I think, but could be 1.10 as well. But anyway, I'll update to the latest just to make sure.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, and definitely give us feedback. We were hoping to get it non-experimental by build, but once Dimitri started working on it, we realized, wow, there's a better way of doing it. And so that because we've made some adjustments, we're going to keep it experimental just a tad bit longer so folks can give us feedback before we lock it in. Cool. Okay, and there was one last update that I want to share with this audience. I already shared it with the US EMEA office hours last week. But I want to go ahead and pull it up for all of you now. Entire screen, okay. So our agent framework is finally here. So if you've been playing with Semantic Kernel, you probably know that we had kind of an initial attempt at agents within Semantic Kernel. We're now calling it the legacy package. And the problem with it was that it was too tied. It was too one-to-one with OpenAI assistance, right? I've been telling folks, hey, we're working on updated abstractions that allow you to have agents powered by other services, right? Not just OpenAI assistance. And so I want to go ahead and drop a link to this getting started so that folks have access to it. I think it does an actually decent job of describing what the new NuGet packages are. And there's some step-by-step examples that walk through some of the core concepts of the new agent framework. But I think one of the best ways to kind of see the power of these new agents is our VP of Design, John Maida, actually created a notebook that kind of shows these different agents working together. And I'd love to just walk y'all through this notebook and how it works, and definitely collect your questions and share them with me once we're done. Okay. So we pull up the notebook. We can see all the different packages that are necessary. The two new ones are Agent Core and Agents OpenAI. They are still off alpha. It'll be a while before we lock them down, maybe end of summer. There's some helper functions that we'll just need to use. And then we have, as part of this example, very simple plugin, a time-based plugin that gets the current time. Okay. The exciting bit, though, is when we actually start creating the agents with Semantic Kernel. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and we'll take a look at what's actually happening. So we have three different agents. One that we're calling a retrieval agent, and it's powered by the Assistance API through OpenAI. And we can pass it a bunch of files. In this case, we're giving a file that describes the travel information for our CVP, Sam. And we enable the built-in retrieval tool within the Assistance API, which basically means OpenAI is going to handle RAG for us so that we don't have to worry about it, right? We just give the files and they do RAG. So that's a retrieval agent. It knows things like travel information, and it has its own persona. It has its own system instructions so that it knows what to do. We also have a math agent. This one is also powered by the Assistance API, and we are giving it the built-in code interpreter tool so that it can write math in Python and answer users' questions. Okay. And then lastly, I wanted to show the power of not just using Assistance API agents, but also agents built entirely with Semantic Kernel. So we call this the chat completion agent since it just uses the chat completion services. And this one, I'm just calling it time agent because we're passing in the time plugin that we created previously, right? So right here. And what's nice about this is there are scenarios where you don't want to use the Assistance API. One, they manage the thread for you, which is good for some cases and not good for others. Like if you want access to it, if you want to manipulate it, if you want to change it. If you use the Assistance API, you obviously have to use an OpenAI model. If you want to use Gemini or Mistral or Llama 3 or a Microsoft model, you can't do that with the Assistance API. But you can, however, use it with the chat completion agent. You just pass it in as AI services in the new kernel, and you're good to go. Okay. So we've created our 3 different agents, and now it's time to actually see them in action, right? So you can add them all together into what we call an agent group chat. So here we're creating a new one. We're passing in all the different agents. We can go ahead and add our math agent as well. We can go ahead and run this and use them, and we'll get some basic functionality. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep going because what's really exciting is when we start using AI to decide when each of these agents should actually speak. Okay, and this is a capability that we were highly inspired by from AutoGen. AutoGen has pioneered a lot of the techniques that allow multiple agents to collaborate and talk to one another to address a user's needs. And one of those, or 2 of those concepts, we can see on the screen here. So the first bit of logic is, how do we know which agent is supposed to speak? Which agent is supposed to chime in and provide some guidance? So to achieve that, we are creating a selection function. You might also hear this referred to as a router function. We're routing to the right agent. And all it is a prompt that tells the AI, hey, tell us which AI agent should we actually have speak next, right? And we're using the descriptions of these agents to populate this prompt. The other important piece is, how do we know the conversation is done? How do we know to send the conversation back to the user, right? And so here I have a prompt that basically asks, hey, is the user's request been answered? If so, respond with yes. Otherwise, respond with no. And we can use these 2 different functions so that when we create our agent group chat, we're calling this one routing chat, we can add the termination strategy. This looks complex, but all it's doing is checking if the agent said yes and parsing the results so that we can get the agent's name. And both of these pieces are used in order to intelligently handle the back and forth chat. Okay. So we have our chat. All we do is add chat messages, and we go ahead and invoke it. Let's go ahead and give this a run and try to see how this actually works. So I'm going to go ahead and run it, and I'm going to ask it, please tell me the exact number of days ago Sam's flight was. Be sure to tell me the exact number of days from today's date. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. That's my request, and it's being sent to all of those agents. And we can already see that the AI, the LLM, was smart enough to select the retrieval agent for the first step of the process, figuring out when was Sam's flight. The assistant returns back with a bunch of information. And unfortunately, it did too much. It tried to do all of it, which is one of the challenges with assistants sometimes. Sometimes you tell them not to do things and they do them anyway. So let's give this one more time. Please tell me the number of days ago Sam's flight was from today. Okay. We'll give this one more shot before I give up on the demo. Okay, so we get the retrieval agent. Let's see if the retrieval agent stays in its swim lane. And if it doesn't, this is just a learning lesson for all of us to make sure that we author our system prompts the right way. So this time it stopped. It said it should terminate no. It says Sam's flight is blah, blah, blah. It's trying to do some calculations, but it's asking, hey, if a more exact calculation is needed, you want to double check. And so we can see that the next agent that was selected was the mathematician. And because it has code interpreter, it can actually perform real math. And so it was able to actually calculate the number of days ago that it was. This isn't perfect. It should have asked the time person to figure out the current date, which kind of shows that this is still experimental. We're still working out the kinks. But if you want to go ahead and start playing around with multi-agent scenarios, Semantic Kernel can now support most, if not all, of the scenarios that AutoGen supports today. Okay. So I'm going to take a pause there and see if there's any questions about our brand new assistance framework. And if not, we can go ahead and open up to general questions.
I guess on that, the agent one, it's probably still a while before that's going to be released, or is it going to be off experimentation? Yeah, I reckon, Matthew. Is there what's the plan on that? Because it seems quite good from what I can see there.
Yeah. So in terms of what's remaining, the gaps. So the biggest gap that we've identified so far is the group chat is not serializable yet. So if you want to save a group chat and rehydrate it and go, oh, these were all the agents, these were all the users that were participating in this chat, and you want to store it in Cosmos DB, that's not possible today. So that needs to be addressed.
Yep.
The other big gap is streaming support. So you notice in my demo, we had to wait before seeing the full content. That's probably the other big remaining gap. So once those are done, I think most of the abstraction will be there. And then we're going to test it by trying to recreate all of the scenarios, all the samples that are inside of the AutoGen package library. And we also want to recreate some of the scenarios from other multi-agent frameworks like Crew AI. Once we've been able to kind of demonstrate that our framework can scale to basically multiple different frameworks and all the different scenarios, that will give me the confidence that we can go ahead and release it as non-experimental. And we believe the way we've abstracted it with like the termination and selection, different functions that can be anything. They don't have to be prompts. They could be hard-coded deterministic stuff. We think that is going to give us the flexibility to support any kind of group chat type of flow that might exist in the future.
Yeah. I was just curious as well, because I think in the past we talked about AutoGen being, that research project, obviously, and we sort of move off and deployed a functionality that sort of based on the work of AutoGen. I think this one here will be something that once it's off experimental will be production grade, you reckon?
Yeah. And what I like about this is it builds on the work that we've already done in Semantic Kernel. So we talked about filters during the first part of this session, right? Where we can do things like responsible AI. Oh, before calling a function, we have to request approval from a user or a human to make sure that it can actually be invoked. Because we've added that as a core capability of a kernel, any agent that uses a kernel, which is all of them, can take advantage of these hooks so that right out of the box, you can start getting some of those approval scenarios, which don't necessarily exist in Autogen, right? And so this is where I'm starting to see, at least personally, like, oh, our investments are starting to compound on each other because of the way we've architected Semantic Kernel.
Fantastic.
Cool.
I have a quick one. I just wanted to know the difference between an agent and having your own kernel that acts like an agent, I guess. Is it just an abstraction layer?
It is just an abstraction. I'm doing another session after this where I'm teaching Microsoft Field. Hey, here's what agents are. And I show like before and after. I think you shave off like 3 or 4 lines of code, but like that's about it. To me, the real power is when you start having agents talk to one another. At that point, you do need some like common abstraction so that all agents can listen the same way and they speak the same way, right? That's where I think the abstraction really starts to shine. When you're not doing group chats, it makes your code a little bit simpler, and it's a good kind of abstraction for you to kind of move around inside of your application.
Cool. And is there a performance hit with agents talking to each other? Does it slow things down? Is there tokens being consumed in the middleware?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge with multi-agent frameworks today is left to their own devices, they're very chatty. They don't know when to really stop. So where we've started seeing a lot of open source projects start to move is instead of doing what I just demoed, and y'all could see the problems with it, where some other LLM is deciding which agents to talk, provide some more determinism by using things like state machines or flows, and basically deterministically say, oh, this agent should speak first, and it should move to the approver before then being delivered by the delivery agent, right? And that's kind of like how we as humans work, right? We create these workflows, whether informally or formally, so that we can all collaborate together. I think until that research gets formalized and we start to help you by baking in those types of state machines inside a semantic kernel, it is kind of a toy, to be frank, because it does use so many tokens and it does introduce so much latency. Great question.
Awesome, thank you.
Arafat asks, what are some of the highlights of the session for Build? Any sneak peek for us? So you could probably get from the session title, we're really trying to highlight how all of our different SDKs are going to be at parity, well, parity-ish. They'll at least be all where the .NET version was V1 like a couple months ago. What that means is if you build a prompt file in YAML in one language, like Python, you can then share it with other languages. If you build a plugin using an open API spec, you can take that plugin and share it with the other languages. And because it's all the same concepts, it's all using the same kind of internal logic, you'll get reproducible results. And to me, what's exciting about this is a lot of companies, you have the AI division, and all they do is write Python code. And then you have your app dev divisions that write .NET or Java. And right now, they don't talk to each other, right? And the app dev teams are sad because they don't feel like they're special anymore, right? But what I think is going to happen in a few months is all these app developers, or sorry, AI developers, they're going to build really cool applications that hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people start using. And then they're going to enjoy live site issues. And they're going to go, oh no, supporting a live production application for thousands of users in Python is awful. And so that's when your app developers in .NET and Java are going to become the heroes. What we want to be able to do is not have them have to completely refactor or rebuild everything. We want them to take assets from the Python developers and just copy and paste them, move them over, and then deploy it. And so our build session is really going to be showing that story. We're going to start by writing an AI application with Python. And if I do it right, I'm just going to copy and paste a bunch of files and see it working inside of Java and .NET. Cool. Okay. Sophia, were there any other questions?
There was just the second one from Arfa. He can't come off mute. He's commuting. It was around bringing the latest .NET Azure OpenAI SDK as soon as it gets released, or does that take time? The reason for that was having low-hanging fruit on parsing the base 64 images.
They fixed it. We're typically fairly fast. I thought we'd normally do it within like a week or so. Do you know, so you can't come off mute, if you can let us know how long that's been fixed? If it's been more than a week, then that's a miss on our team that I'll want to jump on. 5 days. Okay, then give us a little bit more time and we'll get that merged in. So that sounds good. And I think if we're a bit slow right now and just like updating packages, the vast majority of the team is running around like crazy trying to get all of my feature asks in by Microsoft build. So you can blame me for being a taskmaster right now.
I have a quick one. With relation to plans and handlebars planning, where would this fit with all these new agent, I guess, frameworks that's just been released? Do they integrate well? Are the agents the ones that are meant to be running the plans now? And yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's a great question. And I'll sort of tease. It's kind of NDA, so I won't mention the specifics. But what we've seen with agents and kind of function calling is that's kind of like the most cutting edge way of getting planning capability, right? And it's frankly better than the planners that we've built because the prompts are smaller. So that means you're using fewer tokens. It means the latency is smaller. And because it's using a capability of the model that's been fine-tuned for it, it's just frankly more accurate and better, right? There's still a need, however, for an agent within a single shot to combine multiple functions, multiple plugins together into some sort of script, some sort of plan that can be executed, right? So that you can save it, or so you can review the whole series of steps before actually executing it. We developed the handlebars planner because we saw that the AI agents were better at writing code than the custom XML that we had before. But even the handlebars planner, what we found over time is the prompt has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger in order to handle the different scenarios that all of you the customers have had. So we're now at the point where it's painfully slow and it uses a lot of tokens. And so what we've seen the industry start moving towards is using Python as that coding language. And we on the Semantic Kernel team were afraid of using Python because most of the examples were like, oh, we're going to run Python code locally on the machine, which is scary, right? But with things like the Assistance API code interpreter, and Microsoft is going to be providing a solution at Microsoft Build, we can now safely run Python code. So what you should expect at Build and kind of the months afterwards, we're going to be shipping a series of improvements that basically do planning-like capabilities using Python instead of handlebars. So it should be faster, it'll use fewer tokens, and it'll be better because the best language these AIs can write is Python. So we expect that the performance will also improve. So I would say if you have a choice, stay away from the handlebars planner right now. Something better is coming very soon for everyone to play around with.
And I also noticed that like handlebars planners are a little, I guess, weak in their capabilities. Like for example, accessing an element within a list. It's not that easy to do so. So you'd have to develop like some sort of MISC plugin that can do just code just to return back that. Is that correct? Yeah.
That is correct, and it's very painful. And we did that because we're like, oh, we we chose purposely a dumb language to make it safe. So you can blame me for having chosen handlebars. With Python, like you can already start feeling what the future looks like if you're using an assistance API with code interpreter. It will pull down any sort of random Python package in order to like analyze your data. So like you don't have to write all these functions. If it exists in Python, the agent knows how to use it and it uses it pretty well.
Right. Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Other questions? I'm not seeing anything in chat, but would love to have folks come off of mute, or feel free to put it in chat and I can read it off as well.
I guess question, how many of y'all are planning on joining Build either virtually or in person?
Yeah, work with the team. Yasir, Danny here on the call. So we plan to, I don't know, we haven't decided yet, but we plan to have like watching party.
Perfect. What's nice
Good.
about our session for you in particular, it kind of sucks for us, is our session is 6:30 Pacific time, which is like it's late for a build session, but it's great for all of you to watch because that'll be a normal local time.
So really good. I guess the other thing, just around kind of a strategic and directional sort of question. I guess around some of the partners that I work with also asking about Python, and the Python parity with .NET, and whether that's something that going to be announced soon, will be GA and so on.
Yeah, so we are planning on having that announcement for Microsoft Build. There's like, we need to get in filter support and some of the experimental features we haven't brought to Python yet, but the core pieces are all more or less there. The team up until Build is just doing tests to make sure that it actually is at parity and the behavior is the same. Assuming that everything comes back with a clean bill of health, at Microsoft Build, we're going to say, hey, everything's V1, the core pieces have parity, and there will be no more breaking changes for those core pieces within Python. So it'll be a big moment.
Excellent. And following on that, just around memory, I think there's also kind of discussion board. In the discussion board, there's talks about memories and so on. At the moment, semantic memory and kernel memory are the two separate projects at the moment. Obviously, semantic memory part of semantic kernel. Is there any insight that you could share there, Matthew, around the plan on some of the functionality that we have in kernel memory are pretty good, and also semantic memory has its own sort of connectors and so on. There's some overlapping for sure. What's your thoughts on that, and whether that's something that we see in build or shortly after?
So of all the things that had to be cut or slipped past build that I'm most sad about, it's this. We were hoping to have a new abstraction around memory that kind of took the best pieces of them together and provided something that y'all could use. Unfortunately, because of prioritization of other elements, that did slip. The team has started working on what the new abstractions look like. We have our first review of it tomorrow, and assuming that review is better than okay, we'll be asking the engineer to create a PR for that ADR, and I'll be asking, we'll probably create a discussion board so that all of you can start giving us feedback on our new abstractions. We know what's available in Semantic Kernel today doesn't align with .NET patterns. It's very limiting. That's been pushing people to kernel memory, which is more of a research project. And so we want to take those good ideas from kernel memory, just make some general improvements based on what we're seeing across the industry to provide a package an abstraction layer that actually works for most AI applications. Great question. Great question.
So yeah, and I just again, one of the honestly, Danny just mentioned project called MemGPT. I'm not sure if that's something that you've come across, and it seems that it covers quite a bit, although it's not fully production yet. Yeah.
Yes, there's so many of them. Let me just see. Does it use? What is it using under the hood? I'll take a look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
I think
will you
good thing about it
likely?
is, yeah.
Okay.
So the good thing about it is it's I think it's very abstracted, and allow you to do long-term memory and state management, and also in some cases it very much overlapping with kernel memory.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'll send this over to the engineer that's working on it right now. Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is exciting. I will take a look.
Danny, if you're on mute, are you able to share your research, maybe, Danny?
Yeah, sure. So I just had a brief look into this. I haven't really played around too much about this. Is like I think the main thing about this is like for us is like we were trying to get a more more precise way to store our chat history, because chat history is getting longer and longer as we go, and every time we pass you the whole history, it's like using a lot of tokens. And so like this just came through me via a blog post, and I think the main thing about this is like it doesn't keep all the history. It's trying to keep the context of history. So it's almost like building a personal profile as you go, and then instead of remember every conversation, each conversation can go and update an attribute to that profile. Like once it find out your gender, that goes update, hey, this person's gender is male. If we find out, hey, what's your date of birth, that goes to update date of birth, instead of trying to keep all of details in the long list of history.
Yes. If you have an open source project, we'd love to see it. We're starting to kind of noodle on what comes after build. I think to me, kind of thread or chat history management and memory, they're very interconnected, right? You basically described a way of doing memory without using a vector DB, which I love because I hate vector DBs. The way you've described is like you have a structured data store and you're slowly slot filling, and so you get more deterministic behavior, right? So as we kind of work on these memory pieces, I think it'll slightly touch on that. And we also want to provide some more helper functionality so that you can start pruning or trimming down or summarizing your chat history so that it's easier to not just store, but send to the LLM. So that is definitely top of mind for us. And we are starting to hear people hit into those limits because it adds latency and it obviously costs money to send these ginormous chat histories over to the LLM. Cool.
Thanks.
And I guess our plan after build is we're going to revisit everything we're doing and come up with new plans. So if there is something you wish we had and don't, now is the time to yell at us and tell us how important it is. So using discussion boards, Sophia's been doing a great job of like triaging that. Issues is also another great way, or these community office hours. So definitely give us any feedback on directionally where we should go, or specific features that you'd like to see. Okay, cool. And I see Daniel has another question. Basically, for those watching the recording, there's a question of, hey, .NET's great, prompt flow is great, but how do we actually use them together? Prompt flow has been working on a .NET runtime support. I was hoping it would be launched by build. I'm not sure if that'll actually happen, but just know that that is in the works, and hopefully that addresses those challenges. The other thing I'll share is there's been some alignment across industry on how do we actually log telemetry through open telemetry for AI scenarios. Okay? So Semantic Kernel is going to be announcing at Build that all of the Semantic Kernel stuff is snapping to this new convention. And what that means is we should start expecting or start seeing a more healthy ecosystem, a thriving ecosystem of tooling that can take this telemetry and do a lot of what PromptFlow does today, right? So I know the Aspire team, .NET Aspire, is interested in using this telemetry to start building similar dashboards in their product. So I guess get excited. Like all things that require standardization across industry, it takes ages, right? But I do think there's kind of a pot of gold on the other side that works across industries. Okay. Great. Great. And if you need help convincing people not to use LangChain, we love LangChain as Microsoft, but just in case, I learned the other day they don't use OTel. They use like some other custom thing that's proprietary to talk to Langsmith, and it blew my brain. Anyway, so just FYI. All righty.
I'm seeing some typing in chat. I'm not sure if there's some other questions. If anyone wants to come off of mute too, feel free. We have about 10 minutes left.
Just on the build, do we have a list of sessions somewhere? Is that going to be, are we just going to search Semantic Kernel in build schedule?
That is what my boss did.
Nice.
Maybe Sophia will beat me to the punch. I'm having
I
issues with.
was actually thinking that I'm like, which of us is gonna get there quicker?
I'll let you get it. There is a blog post. We found all of the ones that have Semantic Kernel in the name. I think there's a few other ones I've learned that are going to highlight Semantic Kernel. I need to get the blog posts updated, but that's the best resource to use. It's amazing how much a year changes things. Last year, I wasn't even part of the team, but I was told by my boss that they had a fight. They had a fight to get Semantic Kernel on the build stage, and now we have teams all across Microsoft, including us as part of their build demo. So, if you need a sign, Microsoft is like all in on Semantic Kernel. This is it. This is it.
Share sorry, come on camera. I can share another piece of feedback that I've been getting a little bit of with some of the ISVs I'm working with, especially on the .NET side. The .NET developers love the .NET version, and that's the way to go for them because it supports, DI and all the other things that they need from a development perspective, putting, scalability and stuff. But what they often find is they're being thrown stuff over the wall by the AI LLM teams that don't necessarily align to those practices. And it's sort of we're kind of going, well, look, just use, we haven't got a good clear sort of message on how to get those two sides of the I guess product build pipeline to work together to build things that work on both sides, because they'll sort of go, okay, look, we proved this out in PromptFlow, and maybe if we're lucky, we're using the Python version of SK or whatever in LangChain, but then hey, we have to productionize this, and I know that's becoming a bit of a pain point But I love the fact that SK has gone down the OTel route, because that's a very powerful thing for the development teams, because they need to monitor some production, whereas they don't find the AI teams necessarily think about that too closely. So I'm going to lean on that pretty hard to get more of the teams to write in, to move some of that functionality the app devs need and push it to the left to the AI teams to say, you need to bake this in early, because if you don't, it's really hard to productionize.
I'm glad you're giving this feedback. Like, this is what I'm hoping to land at build. And the principle that I'm starting to instill in the team with our different SDKs is all the inputs and outputs have to be identical. So if you have a prompt file, if you have an open API spec, if you have a serialized version of a chat history, if you have a serialized version of anything in Semantic Kernel, it should kind of line up across all these different pieces. I think that's just table stakes that we need to enforce across our different SDKs. And I think that's the first step in making sure that if a AI team builds something, it can be either copy and pasted or translated fairly simply into the .NET version. That doesn't solve everything, because I think the AI teams are always going to be wanting to be cutting edge. And Semantic Kernel is frankly not always going to be cutting edge, because we like to see what's going on and cherry pick the best things. And so I do want to keep an eye on how do we make it also easy for people starting a LangChain, and how do they take their work and bring it into something like .NET Semantic Kernel. I think that will be a focus of us next year, is how do we make it easier to at least tell the story and provide documentation from going one SDK into the .NET version of Semantic Kernel.
Awesome. Fantastic. Look forward to it.
Great. Okay, Sophia, should we start rounding things out?
I was going to say, I'm not seeing any other questions. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate the time. Matthew, thanks for diving into all this.
Yeah, for sure. All righty. Cheers, folks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, you all.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.